What if one moment in 1995 changed a family forever? In 1995, he left her with black quintuplets. 30 years later, the truth shocked everyone. The year was 1995. Anna sat in the hospital room, exhausted but smiling weakly. In her arms bundled, in soft pastel blankets, were 5 newborns, her quintuplets, their tiny fists clenched and unclenched, their eyes blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights. Nurses whispered in awe. Quintuplets were rare enough. But what made the room buzz with tension wasn't just their number. It was their color. Can a mother's love overcome decades of cruel whispers? Anna's skin was pale, her hair a natural. Blonde, and her boyfriend Richard was a respected businessman from a prominent white family. Yet the babies she had just delivered had unmistakably darker skin. The whispers outside the delivery room grew louder. "How is this possible?" Richard stormed in, face pale, but eyes blazing with suspicion. He took one look at the infants and then at Anna. "What is this?" His voice shook. "Don't tell me, they're mine." Anna, still trembling from the delivery, whispered, "They are yours, Richard, I swear." But he cut her off. "Don't lie to me. You've shamed me. You've ruined everything." He refused to hold the babies, refused to even look at them again. Within hours, Richard walked out of the hospital, leaving Anna alone. Her reputation shattered VA. From that day forward, Anna carried the weight of raising quintuplets on her own. The small town where she lived was merciless. Strangers muttered, insults in grocery store aisles. Former friends turned their backs. Landlords refused her applications when they saw 5 brown-skinned toddlers clinging to a pale young woman. She must have cheated, people whispered. Anna never fought back. She simply worked harder. Days blurred into years. She took cleaning, jobs, waitressing shifts, anything that paid enough to buy diapers, formula, and later school supplies. She learned to sew so she could alter hand-me-downs into new clothes. She walked them to school each morning, 5 tiny hands tugging at her. Red blouse. At parent-teacher meetings, she sat alone. Teachers casting sympathetic glances that carried both admiration and pity. The children grew David, the only boy, and his 4 sisters, Naomi, Grace, Lydia, and Ruth. Each was bright in their own way. David loved sketching cars in his notebooks, often imagining himself building them one day. Naomi had a stubborn streak, always standing up for her siblings whenever anyone mocked them. Grace was the dreamer, always humming songs and writing little poems on scraps of paper. Lydia was practical and sharp-minded, quick with numbers and determined to run a business someday. And Ruth, the youngest, was shy, often clutching Anna's hand as though afraid the world might steal her away. Yet, no matter how unique they were, society lumped them together, the black quintuplets with the white mother. Bullies mocked them. Neighbors whispered. Once, when they were about 10, David asked Anna why their father hated them. Anna's heart broke. She knelt down, brushed a tear from his cheek, and whispered, "Because he didn't understand love the way you do." That's his failure, not yours. By the time they were teenagers, the challenges grew sharper. Naomi, fiery and outspoken, clashed with authority. Grace found solace in music, often singing at school events where her voice moved audiences to tears. Lydia excelled in math competitions and talked about one day opening her own company. Ruth retreated into painting, filling canvases with colors that spoke her pain. And David, the eldest, carried the invisible burden of being the man of the sin. Housie grew resentful, demanding answers Anna couldn't give. At night, Anna lay awake, replaying Richard's last words to her. "Don't lie to me." For 30 years, she had carried the accusation, the shame, and the responsibility. She never remarried. She never told her children the full story of the night. They were born. She only promised them one thing: that they were wanted, and that their lives mattered more than her own pride. When the quintuplets turned 18, they threw Anna a birthday celebration instead of themselves. For everything you gave up, David said in his speech. Today, it's about you, Mom. Tears streaked down her cheeks as 5 pairs of hands wrapped around her shoulders. For the first time in decades, she felt seen, not as a disgraced woman, abandoned in 1995, but as the mother who had fought for them against every odd. Years passed swiftly after that. The children became adults, carving their own paths in the world. Still, the wound of their absent father lingered, and though Anna tried to bury the truth, she knew it was only a matter of time before it resurfaced. 30 years had passed since. That night in 1995, when Richard had stormed out of the hospital, the quintuplets were now adults, each carving a place in the world with pride and resilience. David, the eldest, had become an architect known for designing affordable housing projects that transformed struggling neighborhoods. Naomi, stubborn as ever, was now a lawyer specializing in civil rights, never hesitating to raise her voice against injustice. Grace had turned her passion for music into a career, recording soulful tracks that gained a loyal following. Lydia, sharp with numbers, now ran her own business consultancy, guiding young entrepreneurs. And Ruth, once the shyest, had blossomed into a painter whose exhibitions drew critical acclaim. From the outside, they looked like a miracle family, 5 siblings who had beaten the odds, a mother who had raised them alone. But beneath the surface, scars lingered. No matter how far they had come, whispers about their origins still followed them. Strangers speculated, old classmates gossiped, and some in the community, unable to let go of decades-old prejudice, still mocked them. It came to a head one evening when Grace was invited to perform at a cultural event in their hometown. The hall was packed: family, friends, and locals, including some who had watched Anna raise her children with skepticism and cruelty. Grace stepped onto the stage, dressed in a flowing gown, her voice trembling as she introduced her song. But before she could sing, a man's sneer rang out from the crowd. Funny how talent runs in families, if you even know who your father is. Laughter rippled through a section of the audience. Grace froze, her eyes shimmering with tears. Years of mockery, years of whispered insults, all came crashing back at the worst possible moment. Anna, sitting in the front row, saw her daughter's composure crumble. Her heart clenched. For decades, she had endured the whispers in silence, carrying the shame alone. But watching her grown child almost break down in front of a laughing audience was the final straw. She stood slowly at first, then with conviction. Anna walked toward the stage. Grace stepped back as her mother climbed the steps, her red blouse glowing under the bright lights. The hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. Anna's voice trembled at first, but grew stronger with every word. For 30 years, I have listened to your whispers. I have heard the gossip, the laughter, the cruelty. You mocked me when I carried 5 babies in my arms. You mocked them when they walked to school. And even now, when my daughter is about to share her gift, you still mock. Her hands shook, but her eyes blazed with fury and love. She pointed to the audience. You want the truth? You want proof? Take the DNA test. Do it. And you will see that I never lied. These children are his Richards, the man who walked out because he couldn't accept them. The man who chose his pride over his own blood. Gasps filled the room. Whispers turned into stunned silence. Anna's voice cracked, but she did not stop. For years, I carried the blame you threw at me, but it was never mine to carry. You thought I cheated. You thought I was a liar. But the only liar was the man who left us. She turned slightly, her gaze sweeping across the audience that had once mocked her in grocery aisles, whispered behind her back, and taught their children to laugh at hers. Her words cut through the air like fire. I can forgive you for mocking me, she said, her voice raw with emotion. But I will never forgive anyone who mocks my children. Not now, not ever. They have achieved more than you ever dreamed. In spite of you, they carry no shame. The shame is yours. Her last words echoed through the hall. You tried to break us. But we are still here, and we will not bow our heads again." For a long moment, the hall was silent. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. It spread, rising until the room thundered with applause. Grace wiped her tears, lifted the microphone, and began to sing. Her voice trembled at first, but soon soared, powerful and unbroken. On the side of the stage, Anna stood tall, her chest heaving with emotion. For the first time in 3 decades, the burden she had carried since 1995 slipped from her shoulders. She had spoken the truth. She had defended her children. And no matter what came next, they all knew one thing: the truth could no longer be mocked. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales from Storyloom. And let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching Storyloom.